Hi, guys. Welcome to this new podcast series in which I will be sharing with you the different PhD experiences across different countries in the world. And today, with me, I have the pleasure of having Shahmeer Mohsin, who is a very good friend of mine from Pakistan. And currently, he's doing a PhD in Paris, France. So, thank you, Shahmeer, for giving us time.
No, it's good to be on.
So jumping straight to the questions, my first question, or I would really like if you could introduce yourself to the audience. What's your background academically, and what are you doing right now in your PhD?
So I'm doing a PhD at PSL University in Paris. So I have a master's degree, a double master's degree. 1 year of my master's was in Sweden at KTH University in Stockholm. The second year of my master's was in France at INP Grenoble, which is in the Alps region of France. And before that, I did my undergrad in Pakistan at NUST, and that is where the two of us met. And as we speak right now, I'm doing a PhD. And so my PhD is a mix of different things. It's mostly in public policy, but I also do a lot of data analysis, a bit of economics. So it's a pretty multidisciplinary PhD. So that's me in a nutshell.
Awesome. So the next question is that how was the process of finding your PhD? Like, how did you get this vacancy or position of yours, and how did you approach to find the PhD in France?
So in my specific case, so there's this aggregator website called scholarshipdb.com. It has a lot of PhDs, PhD positions on there. So PhD positions in Europe, PhD positions in Canada, the US, and pretty much around the world. So I would really recommend that platform. So that's how I got my PhD. But I know a lot of people who've gotten their PhDs using other methods. For instance, the idea of cold calling, that's pretty overused, and I would say it's a pretty useful tactic. I guess you got your PhD via a cold email.
Yeah.
So yeah, try different options to use these aggregator services like scholarshipdb.com. Then there's findaphd.com. Um, then do cold emails, make a network if you're doing a master's. That really helps in finding a PhD. Then get in touch with people at your university if you're doing a master's. Um, that really helps in bagging a PhD. Yeah, I guess that those are some of the ways of finding a PhD.
And I would also add, like, LinkedIn is also a very good option because some of the professors, like some good professors, they publish their open PhD positions on LinkedIn as well. So that is also something which students can consider.
I would say yeah, that is an option, but it is not the most potent option, in my
Mm-hmm.
opinion. So there are lots of listings on LinkedIn. There are lots of applicants on LinkedIn. It's like the Wild West, and you're competing with a lot of people. Even if you're super excellent at what you do, I wouldn't really recommend it because there's always going to be another person who's better than you, or a bunch of people who are better than you. So I wouldn't really recommend LinkedIn.
Yeah,
If there are
I
few,
asked this question specifically because I knew that you're not a big fan of LinkedIn, so I just wanted
yeah.
to know your opinion. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I mean, you're aware of the ins and outs of how I think about how to find a PhD. And yeah, I guess I mean, so yeah, there's another option. So a lot of so yeah, if you want to do a PhD in, let's say, a certain place, a certain country, let's say in Sweden, so just look up all the universities in Sweden and just go to their websites and go to their job portals and just look up all the PhD options, the PhD
True.
positions they have. That's a pretty potent way of going about it.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. Um, and so basically, the next follow-up question is what's the success rate of the PhD applications in France and in PSL university like yours? How is your experience in that?
I would say apply to as many PhDs as you can. Or let me try to rephrase that. I think there's a sweet spot between quality and quantity. So it's not just about quantity. You don't just apply to 1,000 positions um, and upload subpar CVs. That's not how you should go about it. Apply to lots of places, and at the same time, make sure that your the CV that you're uploading is pretty good,
Hmm.
and it fulfills all of the requirements that are asked for. So I think you should try to find the sweet spot between quality and quantity.
Yeah. And so you would say that the success rate depends on how many applications you have
And the
filed.
success rate depends on, yeah, I mean, I would say it's depends on where you're applying. In France, I just applied to one PhD and I was able to get that. But I do remember having applied to a bunch of PhDs in other places. I remember Germany and Sweden. Didn't get accepted to quite a few of them. So yeah, I would say the acceptance rate is very location dependent,
Yeah,
very time dependent. What time of the year it is, what platform you found the position on. So yeah, just apply to a bunch of places and make sure that your application is high quality.
sounds good then. Um, then how is your life in Paris? Do you enjoy living there? And how is the general French culture? And is it easy to get integrated into the society, considering that someone is coming outside Europe, or maybe from a different country altogether? So, how is that?
I think there are lots of upsides and downsides to Paris and France at large, pretty much like a lot of other places. Um, I guess, I mean, let's start with some of the pros and then we can also delve into some of the cons of Paris. And you can also chime in because you haven't spent time in Paris, but you do know about the nitty gritty of France at large. So one of the pros is that it's a beautiful place. There's a lot of stuff you can do, travel around, lots of history culture written all over it. Um, so yeah, I mean that part is there. So that's a total pro of the place. It's very international too. You get to meet a lot of people from different parts of the world, especially in Paris. So that, I mean, if we delve into the cons, there are quite a few. The language part is the elephant in the room here, I guess. So the language is absolutely a huge problem. So language, especially in some of the remote parts of France, so language can be a bit of a problem. People do not want to speak English, even if they are fluent in English. I had this experience recently where I went to this police station, and I mean the guy spoke extemporary English, but he wasn't willing to speak to me in English. He said, "We're going to speak French. This is France. We speak French here." So that was a bit of a. I mean, I had to go for broken French there, but it worked out in the end. So language can be a bit of a bummer here, which can make you a bit exasperated at times. So yeah, I guess the language part is there. So that's one of
So,
the cons.
parlez-vous français?
Un petit peu. C'est encore. It's a work in progress.
That's nice. Yeah. Okay. So that's the biggest con in your opinion?
Yeah, that's one of the cons. Then I guess it's also worth mentioning. Let's keep it a little uncensored, um, because this is a very informal kind of a session. So I mean, a bigger elephant in the room is French racism. Um, I mean, France can be a bit racist at times, especially to people, browner folks like us. So that can be a bit of a problem. There's a lot of soft racism. Sometimes your colleagues say stuff that they shouldn't say, and yeah, so yeah, racism is there. It exists. It's a reality in France.
Yeah. But I guess like also I would add something to the pros of
Yeah.
France would be that the food is amazing in France. I'm not sure how much French cuisine you've tried, but I think
Yeah.
I really like
If
some
you're
of
not
their cuisine.
vegetarian though, if you're not vegetarian though, if you're
Yeah,
not
I mean,
vegetarian,
I've
then
I've
there's
I've
a
tried
lot.
some nice cheese fondues as well as I've tried some other desserts over there, and it's quite nice, I think. And also, of course, like the boulangerie, the bakery items in France, they are top of the top around the world. So I think like the food is one big thing that the French really are proud of. So I think like if someone is a fan of food, maybe that is something which can be worth noticing, right, Shamir?
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree with that. If you're vegetarian, it's gonna be a bit of a it's not gonna be a walk in the park.
Yeah,
But it's not too bad though. France is getting more vegetarian friendly every passing day, so
true,
that's a good thing. But I mean, lots of if you're not vegetarian, then it's gonna be amazing for you. So
true.
there's a lot of French dishes. Look them up, boeuf bourguignon and so on, ratatouille. Then the bakery items are amazing. The French sweet dishes, macarons, and so on. So yeah, they're pretty good.
Nice. Then I would also like to hear about how is the quality of the education and the quality of the scientific research that you're currently doing. And because you've lived in Sweden, you've studied in Pakistan, lived there, and now you're living in France and doing your PhD. How would you compare the quality of the education there? And are you satisfied, basically?
I think it's. I think the education, the way of going about education is very different in Sweden and France, especially if you talk about the masters. So the masters in Sweden was a bit like Pakistan, where you had this cramming that you had to do a lot of cramming based um, masters. But in France, it's been a very different story from my experience. It was very industry focused, very practical. So I really like the masters in France. I guess you're gonna have similar thoughts about this.
Yeah.
Uh, so yeah, I guess that's how it is in terms of yeah.
Yeah. And the scientific research, is that of good quality?
And the scientific research is, I would say, pretty good. So the scientific research across Europe is pretty good. In France, there are lots of there's a lot of good research being undertaken, a lot of
Mhm.
research being done in collaboration with industry. That's a pretty good thing. So there's this idea of a SIF contract where you do a PhD, but you're also a part of a company. So which is industrial PhD, which is a pretty good idea. I mean, overall, at large, the research environment here is pretty good from my
Yeah.
experience.
Okay. That's nice. And just a follow-up question to that, like here in Belgium, we have like some teaching load as well. Like we have to do teaching duties, and then we also have some coursework which we have to do. So we have to take some subjects that we have to study as part of our PhD program. So how does it work in France? Do you guys have teaching? Do you guys have to do coursework as well, or is it just purely research?
Um, I mean, you're not obliged to teach courses, which is pretty good to have because I know that it can be really taxing at times and pretty cumbersome. You do have to take some courses, but they're just super easy. You don't have any exams for those courses. You just go and have these seminars. So they're super easy. And then most of your time is spent doing research, which is something that I really like about the PhD here.
That's nice, yeah. No, yeah, I agree to that. Like, I remember in my first year, there was quite some teaching duties which we had to do. But I would also like to mention one thing. Like, I have realized that if you want to explore, like, whether you'd be a good fit for the teaching or whether you'd be a good fit in academia in sense of being a professor or a lecturer or something, I think these kind of teaching duties can really give you a flavor about whether you'd be a good fit or not. So I don't really dislike them, but also I would agree to Shami, like the workload sometimes is crazy. So that's something to watch out for.
I mean,
So then,
even in France, you can do that. You're not, I mean, it's not compulsory, but you can always have a chat with your supervisor and yeah, I mean, ask them if there's some teaching that can be done during your PhD, so
yeah.
they can make it work.
And I believe it's remunerated, right? Like for your
It
case,
is.
if you do, yeah, if
Yeah.
you teach, you will get paid, right? Yeah,
You're gonna get paid extra for that.
that's something nice as well. Yeah. And then basically, the duration of the PhD, could you also share something? How long is the PhD generally in France?
Yeah. On paper it's 3 years, so that's the official number of years. But a lot of people take more than 3 years. I would say the people around me are taking more than 3 years. So it's very, I would say it's very research lab, research group dependent, very university dependent, how many years you're gonna take to do the PhD.
Hmm.
So there are some places where 3 years is the way to go about it. But in my case, I mean, the people around me are taking 4 years. Some have taken 5 years. I hope to do it in 3 years, but let's see how it turns out. So, but yeah, I mean, in a nutshell, it's very research lab dependent.
That's great. And then, just to make for the students a bit easy, so now we are heading towards the conclusion of the talk basically. So if you had to like list the top pros, like the benefits of doing a PhD in France, and the top benefits of and the basically the biggest disadvantages or the cons, as we would say, of doing a PhD in France, what would they be and how would you rank them, in your opinion, of course? What are the biggest benefits and the, let's say, the cons of doing a PhD in France?
Okay, so I guess let's start with the pros. So one of the things is that you get decent work-life balance,
Yeah,
which is something you don't get in a lot of other places. For instance, the US, which can be pretty crazy at times. Um, I guess it's the same. It's not as bad as the US, but it's pretty bad in Belgium uh, in terms of the workload. But yeah, there's decent work-life balance here, so that would be a pro, I would say. Um, then yeah, what else? I mean, so yeah, you get a lot of support from the government, which is a
yeah,
pretty good thing to have. So the government supports you with transport costs, which are super subsidized. Then they subsidize your food, the food that you eat at the university. So it's super dirt cheap. Um, then they also pay this thing called a CAF, which is basically housing support. So they pay out some of your rent, in simple words. So I think that's a pretty good thing to have. So I really like this socialist setup that they have for students in France.
that's
So I guess
great.
these are some pros. Um, yeah, I guess these are some that really matter. Then in terms of the cons, I guess we've already talked about a few. The language part, that is a real thing. So if you want to do a PhD in France, you should totally take that into account. That's not something that should be taken lightly. That's a serious thing. I guess we've also talked about the racism part, which can also kick in sometimes. Yeah, I don't know if you have any thoughts because you've been around, right? You've been
Yeah.
for a bit.
How about the salary? I would say,
Ah,
like, comparison to Belgium or let's say the other countries in Europe, how would you compare to that? Like, how's the salary?
the salary again is very research group dependent. Um, I would say the salary in general is less than the salary in other European countries.
That's what I've heard. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, but it's not too different. It's a few hundred euros, but um, thing is that it gets kind of neutralized because you get a lot of support from the government. You get
true.
this housing assistance. Then you get a lot of scholarships. The government just throws out these scholarships every now and then. Even I'm not paying any rent at my place, so I have this. I mean,
That's
it's
a
great.
big relief,
That's a
actually.
huge relief. I have zero rent. Uh, Kudos to the French government for the scholarship. So yeah, I mean that I guess kind of neutralizes the salary part of it.
As they say, like in Europe, it kind of evens out, right? Like in every country, Somewhere the
Yeah,
costs are high, so the salaries are high.
absolutely.
Somewhere the costs are
Absolutely.
low, so the salaries are low. It's
Yeah,
kind
I
of,
mean, exactly. For instance, in Sweden, the salary is higher. It's way higher, but the cost of living is also through the roof there.
yeah.
So yeah, I guess you're
I
right.
can also vouch for that. Yeah. Then this is the second last question, actually. Um, what is the naturalization process in France, and how easy or difficult is it to become a French national if you are an outsider, if you're coming from outside Europe, from Pakistan, India, or from somewhere else? How would you think about that?
Yeah, so I mean, you do check the numbers. I might not get the numbers right here. So do a double check. I guess
Okay.
if my memory serves me well, you need to spend 5 years working to apply for the passport. But if you have a master's degree from France, you need to work for 3 years.
Yeah.
Again, do the yeah, crunch the numbers again. I might be off by a year or something. Um, so yeah, I mean that's how it works in France.
So basically, 3 years down the line, once you get graduated from masters, if you
Yeah.
do a PhD for 3 years, that's also the same. If you do a job for 3 years or more, that's also the same. So basically, as long as you're a graduate from France, you can get a very quick PR within 3 years, and then after that, you can get a passport. But that's
You
like,
can you can get a passport after 3 years. You can apply
oh,
for a
okay,
passport.
even better. So just crunch the
Um,
numbers, as Shabir said, and
yeah,
then
but I mean there are some downsides to it. Uh, I mean, yeah, there is leniency with the numbers, the number of years, but your French needs to be B2. It used to be B1, but with the new French immigration law, it's B2.
oh, I
So
remember actually it was B1, yeah, when I
yeah,
used to be there. Yeah.
now it's B2. So yeah, I
Okay.
think that's been changing. So it's B2 now. But I've heard that there are ways around it. For instance, I think if you've done a master's here, you don't need to give the language test. You just need to clear the interview. So you don't need to show your B2 test skills. You just need to clear the interview. But again, just look this up.
Yeah,
I'm
but
not
generally I
100%
would
sure.
say
This
it's
is word of mouth that I'm quoting here.
no, no, no. Definitely, we understand that, but I would say generally, what my experience is in comparison to Belgium, the process is a bit relatively shorter and easier in France. That's what
Absolutely.
that's actually what I know. So yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, we might have a different government after this, a far right government, so things might change. So if you want to come to
Okay.
France, this is probably the time for it.
Okay, nice. Then final question. What is your general experience in the PhD? Because me and you, we both have done bachelor's in electrical engineering, then we did a master's in energy engineering and data science and so on. So the energy master's was there, and now you're doing a completely kind of a different research direction in your PhD, which is economics and policy side, or is it purely
I mean, I would say it's public policy, a lot of data science,
Yeah, okay. So it's a bit
economics
different
too.
than what your core strengths were used to be in bachelor. So how's your experience generally in this PhD? Are you happy with it, let's say?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the energy masters really helped. Because it's a very diverse masters. I guess you might remember we had a lot of different things that we could flirt with. So there was a lot of core energy engineering stuff. There was a lot of transport policy. There was a lot of energy policy and these kinds of things. So I mean, I kind of delved into some of the policy side of things during InnoEnergy. Did a bit of data science and machine learning during InnoEnergy. Then I worked at the International Energy Agency, which is a subgroup within the OECD, and I worked in transport policy. And I kind of realized that public policy, is something that I really like, and hardcore energy engineering, control systems, that's probably not my cup of tea. So I made this little transition for my PhD, and now I'm doing a PhD, which is a mix of public policy. There's a lot of data science. Mostly, I focus on the transport sector. So, public policy for the transport sector, and with a lot of data science.
That sounds cool. So your experience has generally been good then, so you can recommend other students
Yeah,
who are.
I guess it's more about, so if you do a PhD, if you want to do a PhD, you should make sure that whatever you're doing a PhD in is something that you like. If you have if there's no love lost between the area that you're doing a PhD in, that's gonna be hard. So yeah,
Yes.
I guess yeah. Make sure that the area that you're doing a PhD is something that is totally your forte. Let's
Yeah,
put it that way.
I agree completely. As a fellow PhD student, I agree with that. You cannot spend just 3 or 4 years not liking something and keep working on it because it will eventually drain you out. So
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't have done a PhD for 3 4 years talking about and working on. I mean, what did we have back then? Like capacitors and yeah, MOSFETs and BJTs and that kind of stuff.
yeah, man.
I mean, wouldn't have loved that, to be honest. So yeah, I guess I'm pretty happy with how things are now.
Chale ji. Okay, so that was a bit of Urdu slipping out, but thank you
Yeah,
so
and
much
it's
for.
pretty late. It's 12, so Urdu is gonna come out.
So thank you so much, Shamir. I'm grateful and really happy that you could join and give the insightful answers to the questions. So I hope some of the students out there who have some doubts or who had some doubts might have cleared out, and hopefully they will now see you in France. Hopefully, so you might be seeing more people coming in. So, and thank you guys for watching this video. I hope that you like it. Let me know in the comment section. Let me know with your like button that do you how do you find this video, and I'm thinking to make more of these with many other brilliant students like Shamir, and then I'll stay in touch. Thank you so much, Shamir, once again. Bye. And bye, guys.
Okay. Thank you for having me on. Bye bye.